When you look at the lineup of classic Sega franchises that spanned from the arcades all the way up into modern day, Shinobi isn't one that sticks out as especially noteworthy. Most people see it and think the same thing. Man, Ninja Gaiden is awesome! Shinobi is a series that mirrors much of Sega's own history, having a strong start in the arcades, making a valiant and successful jump onto home consoles. Okay, what's happening on the Saturn? I crashed my car into the Dreamcast. Wait, I'm walking it off. Blood loss. 3DS. Shinobi started life in arcades in 1987, actually predating Ninja Gaiden by a full year. This is the original, though I hesitate to call Gaiden a knockoff in the same way that most people call Shinobi a knockoff of Ninja Gaiden. The idea of a ninja action game wasn't anything new at the time, and it's not like one took major cues from the other. No, Shinobi is its own insane beast that sees the ninja grandmaster of the Far East, Joe, tackling whatever they could get away with having him fight. Oh my god, is that Spider-Man? No, idiot, it's Batman! After the arcades, it would find itself on the Genesis, with Revenge of Shinobi and Shinobi 3. That, through a combination of tough-as-nails level design, amazing music, and gorgeous backgrounds, would put Ninja Grandmaster Joe right next to Sonic as a Genesis mascot. After a small dormant period came Shinobi Legions on Sega Saturn, which sought to take the reputation that it had for beautiful graphics and keep it going by transitioning to full-blown Mortal Kombat digitized actors. Oh wow, I had no idea Joe was real. And that is the entire history of Shinobi. I feel so naked. Yeah, there weren't really any influential developers behind it, no canceled games or missed opportunities. There really is nothing to say about Shinobi. Sega just finished up with the franchise. I think they were busy, losing all their money. In fact, the most interesting game in the series is Shinobi for PS2. The 2002 release date meant that this would be one of the first games Sega made following the collapse of the Dreamcast, and them having to rough it out as a third-party developer on Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo's couches. They had a major incentive to throw a creative Hail Mary that would catch people's attention. And what better way to do that than by cashing in on a brand that had been lying dormant both in the market and in people's minds. Developed by Overwork, the team behind Sakura Wars and Skies of Arcadia, the game was originally slated for a release on the Dreamcast before being shifted over to the PlayStation 2. It would get the full red carpet treatment from Sega, releasing with a tie-in comic from publisher Dark Horse, magazine print ads, commercials. This was a big deal for them since they needed to prove they could adapt to their new status as a third-party developer. Let's see how they did. So the game starts with a showdown between brothers Hotsuma and Mori Itsune in a ritual to become leader of the Oboro Ninja Clan. They clash, and we're not allowed to find out what happens for another 4 years. Oh, hey, funny I should mention 4 years, because that's how long it takes for an evil sorcerer to unleash Hellspawn upon Tokyo, and erect a giant golden castle in the center of the city. It's then that a mysterious Mori Itsune-shaped ninja with a Hotsuma-shaped scar appears, and tells the sorcerer that he's now in charge of the Oboro clan. Since the spirit realm is packing enough explosive power to flatten tanks, the government calls in its last line of defense, which is of course a single ninja. What the hell's he supposed to do? He's not even named Joe! Also, while I was futzing with the settings to put the jump button back where it belongs on the X button, I switched the voices from English to Japanese. Needless to say,
these are not the affairs of a rogue ninja.
The Oboro are dead! You are the leader of nothing!
Their deaths shall be avenged by my blade.
Ha!
Hotsuma, let us rest in peace.
Please, kill us!
Shirogane, Akagane, not you too.
wow! I was robbed. On our way to go smash up the tower, our helicopter gets taken down and leaves Hotsuma to hoof it all the way to the castle on his own. And from there, the game starts. No, I don't think it's awkward that we all looked at the same thing first. That scarf! Let's really dive into that scarf. This is one of the most visually striking effects on the entire PlayStation 2. Trying to wrap your head around how this scarf works is nearly impossible. It just defies everything you think of when you think PlayStation 2 graphics. It's so smooth and elegant looking. It flows so naturally and swoops around the screen, but is thin enough that it never takes up screen real estate or gets in the way. This scarf alone would have been more than enough to say that this game has a great visual style, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. Across all of the game's levels, it keeps a very important lesson that so many other edgy games forget. Just because it's dark doesn't mean it shouldn't be colorful. Every stage has a very solid color palette, and good backgrounds that make them all distinct, as well as make them fun to look at. For this stage, even though it's an industrial cityscape, that doesn't mean it can't still splash in unique colors like a lavender fog that covers everything, as well as various neon signs that light up the gray buildings. But Hotsuma's so much more than just a pretty face tied up in a nice-looking scarf. For moves, you have a basic 4-hit combo with your sword, with the biggest hit coming at the end with a lot of ending lag. You also get a dash that lets you dodge through enemy attacks and leaves an afterimage that confuses enemies, shurikens that stun enemies in place while you try to get to them, and special ninjutsu arts that can be performed with these consumable scrolls. While the shurikens are pretty easy to find throughout the stage, these scrolls are way more scarce. So if you're gonna use one, make sure it's your only option left, or it's the end of the stage and it doesn't matter. As you fight your way through the streets, you'll notice these orbs in the upper corner that represent the amount of enemies in an area. But instead of going away when you kill them, they light up. Well, this is the game's defining system, the charge mechanic. How it works is that your sword starts out fairly weak, taking a full combo to kill even the most basic grunts. But with each enemy that you kill, it will power the sword up more and more, until eventually you're killing everything in a single hit. And if you manage to kill 4 or more enemies before the defeated enemies have a chance to despawn... You'd think that every combo ending with an in memorial for all the enemies you just killed would get old. No. Never. Not once did I ever want the game to stop telling me what a good job I was doing. This system, in combination with the charge, is one of the best I've ever seen in a character action game. What would be fodder grunts in any other game suddenly become a valuable resource, and add heaps of strategy to a very simple combat system. There is now a very tangible and real reward for keeping your combo up. The game doesn't really care how you do things as long as you finish the level. Sure, it's gonna give you the stink eye with a B, but who cares? But now you want to do well, because it means doing well makes you feel so cool. And seeing this cutscene is the game's way of giving you a gold star for doing so well. It's an incredible feedback loop of getting better at the combat so you can feel the validation of this cutscene over and over. It gives every battle, no matter how minor, a very climactic feeling as the camera will sometimes line up in just the right way to make you feel like the whole string was planned out from the very start. Other times it will focus on what really matters. It makes fights cinematic without taking control away, as this isn't the result of you mashing a button or doing a QuickTime event. All of this is because you were good enough at the game to earn it. That's not the only effect it has, though, as now during fights you need to keep your wits about you and strategize about what's coming next. Now you know that going into fights, it's important to focus on the smaller enemies and then make a mad dash towards the biggest dog in the room to cut them down in one hit. The game doesn't need intricate and branching combo strings to make you feel like a fighting genius. With one button, this game does what so many others need a whole controller to do. Now, there is a flip side to this, of course. It's hard. The combat I just described, it is crushingly difficult to string all of this together properly, and a lot of the time, you won't be able to. Combos will be dropped, hits will be taken, and no cinematic for you. That's fine though, because you may have messed this string up, but there's no saying you're gonna fail the next one. In fact, you just learned that whatever you were trying, wasn't working, so however you messed up last time, just don't do it again. The game demands perfection if you want to get the best results, but it also gives you the time that you need to figure out how to be perfect. It gives you waves upon waves of smaller enemies like these dogs that die in one hit no matter what, zombie ninjas that need a combo to take down, all the way up to a demon tank that needs you to charge up your sword before any real damage gets done. And part of that learning process is that you can take down the tank with regular attacks without charging up your sword at all, but it's not cool. The level ends out with a cameo from another beloved hack-and-slash franchise, the infested chopper from Devil May Cry 2. Welcome home, old friend. Burn in hell. Part 2 of the first stage starts out with a cutscene showing Hotsuma killing his brother Moritsune with the cursed sword Akujiki in order to complete the ritual and become leader of the Oboro clan. The stage that follows is far more vertical than before, and has a lot more instant kill pits that you're likely to fall into if you haven't mastered the wall run. Just like the rest of the game, it takes a very simple approach to this. Jump at a wall, you'll cling onto it until you jump off or reach the edge. It's very easy to learn, but getting a grasp on how exactly it controls can take a hot minute. But once you understand it, it becomes just another tool in your arsenal. The stage quickly bustles you into a boss fight against... well, there's just no way of knowing that's my brother. This is the first time the game properly takes the kitty gloves off and smacks you across the face with them. You've had your fun watching the cutscene, but it's time to see if you're really in this for the long haul. Moritsune... this guy is a very difficult opponent for first-time players, with a powerful dash that can be repeated a near infinite amount of times. Or a single time depending on what he's feeling like. He's got an electric dome attack that will lock you in place and leave you unable to attack, and most importantly, summon a group of ninjas to get in your way as well. That doesn't mean there aren't some tricks newer players can take advantage of. Moritsune is vulnerable to falling off of the platform, which means if you lure him to the edge of the stage and either knock him off or let him dash off, he'll lose a lot of health. The ninjutsu arts you have can do a lot of good work in getting rid of his health, and attacking him after dodging the dash teaches you a game-wide lesson, that back attacks deal double damage that a normal attack deals. You're gonna lose to this boss a lot on your first playthrough, but Keely, you understand why you're losing. All of his attacks are shown in the first few seconds of the fight, and from there it's just more of a matter of learning how to dodge and when to strike. It's a fight that really de-emphasizes and discourages an aggressive playstyle, and wants you to take things slowly and wait for the exact right time to go in for the kill. It's the only ninja game I've ever seen that's done that assassination, one-hit, one-kill style that's not a stealth game. A ninja's two greatest allies are the shadows and the 2 tons of TNT he keeps on his person. So after exploding Moritsune, this guy, to a standstill, his blood manages to reawaken Akujiki, as it tastes the blood of our dead brother. No way! You killed my brother too? It's so hard, isn't it? After another flashback showing a young Hotsuma and friends finding Akujiki for the first time, we find that now the sword is going nuts. Our childhood friend and fellow ninja Ageha finds us and lets us in that Akujiki is cursed, and it feeds on the energy of Yin, of Yang fame. If we don't keep the sword fed, it'll start feeding on us instead. Luckily, demons are fit to burst with Yin, so as long as we never stop killing, we'll be fine. How does this affect gameplay? I got this nifty forehead vein from the stress it gave me. Well, where what used to be a little emblem is now a meter that is constantly draining. If you spend too long not killing things, the meter will drain until eventually it starts zapping your own life force. Killing demons refills it, but if you waste too much time and don't execute enemies quick enough, you're done for. Having a pseudo time limit now means that every second matters. You have to keep moving, find new enemies to kill, and do it as fast as you can or you're gonna die. And giving us a stage without that means that we aren't screwed over from 2 different angles, both learning the game and learning how to live with a short lifespan. If you're playing the way the game wants you to play, you'll be fine. If you play like a human being, you will be in constant panic. But I love it! That perfect record the game wants you to strive for just got a new condition: you also have to do it as quickly as possible, and that makes the already thrilling combat all the more exciting. Now every enemy isn't just a resource to keep your combo going to see the cutscene, they're also a resource that keeps you alive. And this isn't the only resource, you also have your regular health you need to keep an eye on. The level does its best to offset this stress as it's set in a lovely Japanese courtyard, having you run through this corner, and this corner, and this corner. These are all different corners. Yeah, so I said I liked the level design earlier. I more so meant the aesthetics. Every stage looks very pretty, but have no real depth. Some stages hide it better than others. 7A, for instance, has these long uphill segments with a bend that are pretty hard to notice repeating, but the fact that these little pockets are so distinctive in their design makes you recognize that you're looping by the second time you go through one. The second half of the stage also has them, but features more varied arenas between them to make up for it at least, including these pagodas that you can jump up onto to reach new areas, and collect more of these Hotsuma doubloons that unlock special trinkets later in the game. It also has some side challenges you can go out of your way to do for some walking around health, like taking on these big staff-wielding Tengus without any smaller enemies to offset his large health pool. You'll also run into cannon fodder enemies that make you think a bit harder before tackling them, like these green ninjas that have shielded chakrams that will block attacks from the front and require you to go behind them if you want to beat them. The boss for 2A is a pair of ninjas killed by Mori Itsune and resurrected to serve the sorcerer. It's a classic Ornstein and Schmo type boss, with the girl having a pair of mini scythes that can tear you up close, while the bigger guy occupies the back of the arena with a sling that can launch fireballs. The two naturally cover each other's weaknesses very well, and make approaching either of them a risky endeavor. You have to focus on one or the other if you want to survive, and regardless of what you try, it's likely to be the girl that you take out first. After taking her out, best done by stunning her in place with shurikens and tearing into her back, Barry the Slinger is much easier to take out. Our second boss fight in 2B finds Kobushi, our ninja grandmaster, gravely wounded, and who shows up again but...
You thought me defeated? The infested Chopper clan shall rule all of Japan under an iron rotor!
Yep, if you couldn't get enough of this guy in the first fight, you're in luck since he's back, with a fun trick to shred his health, since you can cut the missiles as he fires them, and if you do it close enough to them, they blow up in his face. After putting down our rival once and for all, Kobushi tells us that it's our clan's responsibility to seal Haruko the Wizard whenever he resurrects. And now that he's back, it's up to Hotsuma to seal him away again. We run off to stop him before he does any damage. Any more damage, as Kobushi dies in Ageha's arms. The next stop on our journey is to a ninja shopping mall, you know, to buy ninja groceries. But I like to call this level the Civ, because this is where anybody still worried about the difficulty is gonna get filtered out. The game has let you have your fun, but it's time to get our big boy pants on. These ninja dogs are gonna make more players quit than almost anything else in the game. So they're simple on paper, since they're just dogs with swords in their mouths. I've dealt with those. I own one of them. But these things are so much harder to hit than any of the previous enemies. They're just like the shield ninjas from the last stage, except every angle to move to is blocked with dogs. It doesn't matter if you hit the sword of a dog you're targeting or the sword of a dog off to the side, if you hit a sword, you're getting blocked. That means that wildly swinging your sword around without a plan is gonna leave you helpless and get you torn to pieces. If you don't start thinking about enemies in this way, where you have to account for proper angles of attack, you won't win this game. It's that simple. Because once you do learn how to fight the dogs, they are really simple. Isolate one or two, dash behind, one-hit kill. They're extremely easy to fight after you get over how hard they are to fight. All of this from dogs in Party City ninja outfits. How does he practice ninjutsu? He needs a flea collar. The level past the first wave of dogs can still be pretty tough, and planning your eventual death into travel time is gonna give you a much more realistic idea of how long you're gonna be here. Luckily, that shouldn't be too long. Levels near the start of the game cap out at around 5 or 7 minutes, which means it won't take an eternity to get back to where you died and give whatever killed you another shot. Rounding out this half of the stage is a boss fight against... Oh, sorry, I was mistaken. So, you remember how you can charge your sword by killing enemies to deal more damage? You know how boss arenas are slowly filled with more and more enemies? You know how bosses take damage? That's right, bosses are not excluded from the charge mechanic, and that means if you attack a boss with a charged sword, it will only take a few slashes to kill them. This was my first time fighting this boss. I don't know his name. Don't know what any of his attacks are. Heck, he might not even have attacks. This might have just been a tourist who was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
これでやっと自由。もう操られずに済む。
You will live on forever in my heart. What does it matter? Your name's Alan now. Stage 3B immediately sets itself apart from the last one, as even though the theme remains the same, what if a mall was green, it completely abandons the ninja dogs for these spiders, and the webs they leave all around the ground. These things can be a real pain to navigate, as on the surface, it isn't that bad, just slows you down and makes things take a bit longer. I would be all for taking things a bit slower, except adults have these things called deadlines, and an evil sword is threatening to beat the shit out of me. As soon as you realize what these webs mean for your sword's yin meter, it goes from an inconvenience to a health hazard, as you try to cling to walls to avoid ever even touching the ground in the first place. That repeated segment problem from the last stage does start to get a bit worse here, as you go through the exact same hallway around 3 times, which makes tangible progress a bit hard to parse. It can feel like you're running around in circles until you get to the boss, but we haven't even gotten to the stage that's the worst for that. Finishing out the stage is the boss battle against a giant tiger spider. I've fought Godzillas. Plural. You have no power over me. Whereas with previous boss battles, the tactic of camping out enemies to try to kill the boss in one hit, it was more of a fun challenge you could attempt in order to stylishly finish the fight fast. Here it becomes a lot more of a necessity as the boss is big and dangerous. The sweep attacks it'll do with its arms, along with a spread shot of venom, means you'll take out an inattentive player really easily. However, if you can line it up just right... How the hell did this company make Project Altered Beast? With the spiders dead, the priestess girl who Kobushi wanted us to find explodes into butterflies and flies away into the burning ruins of the city, which means we have to give chase. Now, this stage is the absolute worst when it comes to the repeating environments. There were loads of times where I was convinced the level doubled back on itself. There were so many times that this very specific bend was used that I was honestly questioning if I had taken a wrong turn and was repeating parts of the stage I had already done. I wanted to get this part out of the way so I could spend the rest of the time gushing about what a great stage this was. The main new enemy type introduced in this stage are these butterflies that can either set themselves on fire to fly at you or launch a fireball. All that really matters though is that this is the first time a stage is predominantly populated with flying enemies, and the game teaches you that hitting a flying enemy will reset your mid-air dash, which means you can either hit the same enemy again or move on to the next one immediately afterwards. This cranks the game's speed up by a lot, as now you're able to kill lots of enemies in rapid succession, slicing through 4 or so flying enemies that can't block so that when you touch ground, whatever's waiting there won't be waiting much longer. The game also makes sure you know how to do this by locking off the rest of the level until you learn. There are sections like this one where you need to cross a gap, which you can do by either walking around it or by dashing from butterfly to butterfly. And the section immediately afterwards makes things even tougher by throwing in a tank that will fire at you as you try to pass, and no alternate method. You have to attack the butterflies or game over. The final segment of the first half is this times 2, as the gap is now longer, there are more butterflies, and now there are double the tanks. Get it right the first time, or die. It's a very natural escalation of difficulty, teaching you what to do with a bit of training wheels, making you apply it without them, and then making you perfect it. And even though it sounds like it could be annoying or frustrating, it escalated in just the right way that it never felt that way. Now, don't get confused. Just because it's not frustrating or annoying doesn't mean it's not hard. This is really difficult to pull off on your first time, but the game helps you get better. 4B sadly doesn't have as much to report on. Not that the level is bad in any way, far from it, the game is still fantastic, but so far this level just isn't doing a whole lot. There are a few sections which are a little awkward, like this demon tank surrounded by the butterflies where the lock-on will betray you, but it's just a single segment of a bigger stage. Honestly, the most noteworthy thing about 4B is that it lacks any real distinction. No new mechanics, no lessons to teach you. After 4A is another difficulty spike, I can understand wanting to lay off the player a bit and give them a chance to feel like they know what they're doing again. As for Stage 4's bosses, it starts out with Haruma, another member of the Oboro clan that's been zombified and forced to fight on behalf of Haruko. And hell if a design like that isn't also gunning for main character status. Fire Tiger Jacket is almost as good as our scarf, and the boss doesn't let down a design this fine either. Haruma is very fast-paced and prefers to keep the fight at range with fireballs and explosive teleports. Keeping close to him can be difficult, but it's possible to study his patterns and know what spots he could teleport to. It's also possible to use the shurikens on him, and if you do, it's easy enough to string back attacks on him. And when the enemies get spawned in, you know exactly what to do. Now, in most games, when they throw a bunch of grunts at you in a boss arena, you groan and remember that game developers have extremely difficult jobs. In Shinobi, though, seeing the room flood with grunts is your green light to start going nuts. Slash them all quickly and the boss will be vulnerable to an instant kill. It works just the same here and helps to round out an awesome boss fight. 4B's boss, on the other hand, is this butterfly lady who wants to use the priestess's body as her own, and her fight sure is a lot more simple. It's not really worth it to try and hit the boss before the butterflies spawn, so you're left to just wait it out while the boss attacks you, dodging simple moves that will never hit you. Like 4B as a whole, it's not bad by any means, just simple, and after 4A and Haruma really tested you, simple isn't bad. I was just hoping for an escalation of what was done before, rather than a parallel line. Although, that simplicity does make this boss the most alluring to try to do flawlessly, never getting hit once and only hitting once. Success in that fashion is more tangible with this boss than any other, given how simple and easy it appears. And I even restarted the fight despite winning, because I was dead certain killing her in one slash was possible. And maybe it was, but with her hugging the wall, a back attack didn't seem feasible. After she's kicked the bucket, we rescue the priestess Kagari and learn that not only is she the sacrifice that Haruko needs to regain his full power, but she's the final surviving member of her clan, just like we are. Hotsuma learns all this while refusing to uncross his arms. Think he's ever stabbed himself with the knives he keeps on his forearms? Before we can escape, Moritsune comes back with a flood that separates us from Kagari long enough for another dead Oboro clan member to come in and swipe her and... Hotsuma, you really need to tell me you can do these sorts of things. A jump that big might have been useful. Might have also been useful to skip the next stage. Yeah, 5A isn't the game at its best. So you need to hop across rooftops over the flooded streets, because if Hotsuma gets a little water on his scarf, it isn't gonna flow in the wind as well. Have you tried putting this thing in a dryer? It comes out as the Gordian knot. So the game is under this delusion that fighting enemies while clinging to walls is in any way comfortable or fun. At most in previous levels, it's something you realized you could do, said, oh, none of that, and then went back to having fun. The game saw this and thought it was weird. There are a lot of segments in this level where you need to fight these clawed ninjas who will cling to the walls, and you'd think all you would need to do is just cling to the wall and swing, right? Yay. The game approaches something that resembles Mercy since it often makes these fights skippable, but it leaves this annoying hitch where you feel like you have to avoid parts of the game, like eating around food you don't want to eat, and it doesn't feel good. The water as well can be a hassle, since touching it with as little as your pinky toe is grounds for a full level restart. The levels aren't that long that this is a major setback, but you'd still have rather not lost to something so arbitrary. But then you get to a segment that's pure combat and oh yeah, this game's really good! The level ends out with a boss fight against Congo, the next Oboro clan member who has very distracting nipples. The fight against Congo is another great boss. It's tough. Incredibly tough, as his attacks come out quickly and have tons of knockback. His main move is this lightning-infused dropkick that he does to try to justify his stupid sword stilts. When he does finally call in for backup and you start seeing red, they're spread out amongst the arena like no other boss before him, which makes a one-hit kill much harder to execute. That's not a bad thing either. As the game goes on, it should be harder and harder to make you strive for that sense of accomplishment. The game's very good at making the impossible seem possible in that way. Trying to navigate the arena to get to the enemies while Congo stays as aggressive as ever makes the fight feel a lot more dangerous than the previous ones. And after a rather passive boss, it's the exact shot of adrenaline into the arm that you need to make up for a so-so stage. And the stage right after that doesn't even exist! Yeah, 5B is just the boss battle, and honestly, I've seen what they've been cooking up in 5A. Leave it in the oven. Our fight is against a brand new snake demon, and if big guy who uses lightning is an uncommon combo, ice and snake is even less so. The boss has this one attack where it looks like he's shooting a giant ice beam at you, and while it may seem like that at first, the closer you get reveals he's actually firing a large volley of frozen snakes. The boss itself has a pretty deep move pool, with some icicle shots, a teleport that does way more damage than you'd think it would, and the aforementioned snake laser. This boss is really tricky. As while other bosses have suggested heavily that you use the charge mechanic to kill them quickly, this one all but requires it. The boss is very touch and go, and you'll only be able to land a single hit before he warps away. And if you don't move yourself, a fifth of your health just vanishes. It can be a really trying fight, with the perfect execution needed to win. But just as you reach your breaking point, and you think this is ridiculous, I think I'll just stop playing for a while. I am the best to ever do it! Nobody is on my level! I will not be signing autographs! Ageha returns at long last to tell us where Haruko is held up. Apparently he has an in with the Nakatomi conglomerate, a tech company that builds weapons. What does a wizard have that a tech company wants? Wait, what does a tech company have that a wizard wants? 6A! I hate it! It has been so long since I've properly used this, but this one part of this one level is such a lowlight that I have to use it. We're going to fucking war! I haven't used this term in over a year. Definition fans, make some noise! Sunshine moments are parts of games that you really like. It could even be the best game you've ever played. Without fail, though, there's that one moment. Just a single moment that makes you say, oh no! Blight Town, the Water Temple, the San Andreas train, and of course, Super Mario Sunshine, where sometimes whole worlds are built out of sunshine levels. We are now entering hour 3 of the King Boo boss battle, and I will not lie, morale is waning. I say all this to illustrate how bad 6A is compared to the rest of the game. Alright, so what makes this stage hot garbage? Well, it certainly isn't the visuals. The whole level has this slick, futuristic feel that, after the pagodas and traditional architecture of the past few levels, makes it stand out in the best way possible. The enemies and hazards are, at first, pretty easy to deal with. These new drone enemies act about the same as the butterflies, so not much new to learn there. pain really begins as you walk through the next door and see what makes this level so different. The major reused set piece in this level are these tall rooms where you have to take blind leaps of faith to get close enough to the enemies to cut them up. It is incredibly difficult to wrangle the camera in a way that makes seeing enemies possible, as it gets caught on the walls really easily. And running along said walls to get to them before you drop the combo is easier said than done. Oh, but what if you just drop back down to the floor and then climb back up? What about this game makes you think it owes you a floor? All of the floors in these rooms are bottomless pits, which means that if your combo ends a bit too far from the wall and your dash can't take you there, you're starting the level over again. And it's always by a hair that you miss it. It's never by a wide margin where it's like, I was just out of position. It's always just about there. Then all of Hotsuma's forward momentum ceases to exist and he sinks like a stone. There are so many rooms in this level that just aren't fun to get around at all. The rest of the game does a great job making you understand why you failed and what you did wrong. Not this one. In this one, stuff you can't see coming is the reason you'll die 100% of the time. Either an enemy that just comes out of nowhere, or a minor gap between you and the wall that there is no way to correct for. And this level is so much longer than the rest. There aren't a lot of rooms where you can move quickly through, so what in every other level is fast-paced now becomes a slog as you try to get through a room as fast as possible. Not because you're having fun, but just to get it over with. And right at the end of the level is supposed to be a fight like the tanks and butterflies from 4A, where you kill all the little guys before instantly killing the big guy, except said big guy is this two-headed Oni, who's only vulnerable on his face, and he's on this narrow bridge, so you can't cling to anything. So if you mistime a single slash, or he hits you once, you go flying off the platform, but not far enough that you can dash to a wall to save yourself, and you die. And remember, if you die here, you go all the way back to the beginning of the level, and have to do the tall rooms over and over and over again, just for the chance to lose again. Oh, but the cherry on the cake, the boss in this level is the worst! It's the last Oboro clan member, this blind swordsman, and at first, I really dug the idea. The floor of the arena is covered in water, so while he can't see you, he can use the water ripples to tell where you are. Oh, okay, so the level's been all about clinging to the walls, the floor is dangerous, so cling to the walls and wait for the grunts to spawn. So how I tried fighting the boss was exactly that. Cling to the walls, stun him, back attack. But this boss is so strong and fast that attempting to approach him is all but an instant loss. I studied him for a while to see when he would stop doing his sword beam attack, and he just doesn't. As long as you're on the ground, he will attack you with moves faster than your dodge. So just stay on the walls, right? That way he can't hit you. You're right! He can't! He can't even touch you on the walls, but guess what? The second you jump off, you're back in danger. That means all you can do is wait. The optimal strategy for the boss is to sit still and do nothing. Other bosses have felt that way, like Stage 4B's boss, but the stand still and do nothing there was at least punctuated by dodging attacks, getting a good angle, playing the game. No. Here, the best way to beat the boss is, in the most literal sense, stand still and do nothing. Then the enemies spawn in and you think, good! Help! Not so, as the level trained you to expect these drones to launch fireballs, and now they're firing stage-long lasers. Oh, and since the beams are often parallel to the walls, if you're clinging to one to try to escape the mean man down there trying to turn you into chopped liver, you'll be shot off and launched back down with no way of knowing that it was coming. And just before the fight started, I noticed Hotsuma's headband had this weird little nick in it that looked like a pair of plump kissable lips. Just a little landing strip for smooches, for goodnight kisses when he has a bad dream. Can you tell this last stage kind of broke me? 6B is mercifully like 5B, which means it's just one boss fight. Except this one is against the ultimate weapon Yatsurao. This is Haruko's deadliest weapon, sealed away for over 70 years, and finally powered back up by a combination of yin energy and Nakatomi technology. But for all the time and all the power it took to bring this thing back online, It has one single design flaw. They didn't account for me. Yeah! What was I complaining about? 6A? Do those even go together? It turns out Yatsurao being destroyed was all according to plan, as now that it's broken, Haruko is free to absorb its energy and make himself young again. He's gotten all the power for himself and intends on returning to his golden castle to continue his conquest and take over the world. Hotsuma remembers that he was trying to do something about that and springs into action, only for Moroitsune to hop in and block his attack. Then, Hotsuma learns that the mysterious ninja working for Haruko is Moroitsune! And he is the last person on Earth to figure that out! The path forward now is clear. Get to the castle and kill Haruko! The way there needs us to go through an old shrine, and wouldn't you guess, as soon as the game is done with 6A? Back to being amazing! Yeah, 7A, while not featuring much in the way of new content, is a fantastic level. Enemies are difficult and much more spaced out. Gotta keep count on who's where, how many hits it will take to kill them, and how much time you have left in your combo. Then later on, you gotta use what you learned back in 4 and 5A, as the only way across huge gaps is a combination of wall running and air slashing. It's a thrilling stage that doesn't do anything crazy, but at this point I'm thankful. By level 7, you've settled into a rhythm that works, and changing things now would just be cruel. What I'm saying is I'm shocked the game didn't change anything. This game actually reminds me loads of Gungrave in how the core gameplay is very simple. Some may even say shallow. But both this and Gungrave are able to counteract that with a heavy dose of style and spectacle. And Shinobi improves on that by making the spectacle solely based on how good a player you are. The boss fight at the end of the stage is strangely Ageha, who, after helping all game, suddenly wants Hotsuma dead. It turns out she's the one who broke Haruko's seal, unleashed hell on Japan, and cost the entire clan their lives. All because she wants Moroitsune back. And now it's time for the final battle between childhood friends. Equal in skill, power, and experience. A battle for the ages is about to unfold. Stage 7B starts with Ageha's plan going really well as the resurrected Moroitsune stabs her. Never trust a man with a seagull lodged in the back of his head. Haruko completes the ritual to transmute the soul of the ultimate hellspawn into Moroitsune's body and starts the rematch with our long-dead brother. This fight is nothing like the first, as all that remains is a move that kind of resembles his old dash attack. Other than that, it's all changed. Now he summons out these little dragon larvae as minions, but in low enough numbers that the only way to instantly kill him is to farm them out and let them spawn in large numbers. But that carries its own perils, since they're a lot tougher than the average grunt. Moroitsune himself gets a huge damage and speed boost, now having your dash on top of explosive shurikens and near-instant movement. That dash specifically leaves an afterimage that your lock-on will stay on after he leaves, tripping you up even further. This is easily the most challenging boss in the whole game. Trying to figure out any strategy that works against him is a struggle, as everything you learned in the last fight with him doesn't apply. In fact, my path to victory eventually came from doing the exact opposite of what the old fight taught you. In that one, the best way to win was to take things slowly and wait him out. Here I got the best results by fighting aggressively from the very start. Do whatever you have to win. Corner trap him, spam moves, trust me, I'm sure the game will be proud. Mix in enough charged up back attacks and eventually he'll fall. The satisfaction of beating him, even without a perfect combo, is amazing, and caps off the best boss battle the game has to offer. Moroitsune assures Hotsuma that his spirit is resting inside Akujiki, and that he'll always be by our side as we head off for our final mission. 8A and 8B don't mess around. You're about to start the biggest challenge in the game, and there's no turning back. Enemy varieties are at their toughest. Platforming demands perfection, and a single mistake leaves you with no one to blame but yourself. The design for each level as well is super cool. The first half of the stage has an ethereal feel, with all these towers floating within this one tower, and makes wall running from one to the next a blast. Enemies are positioned in just the right places to string combos together with ease. These last two levels are designed to celebrate how far you've come ability-wise, giving you way more difficult versions of challenges from previous levels, dashing between enemies over bottomless pits, and just narrowly getting back to the walls. This sort of wall running is the section the first stage constantly repeats, but with a challenge like this, I'm more than happy to do it. The first half ends out not with a boss fight, but a graduation test for the combo system. Kill 8 flying enemies, 1 huge guy, then hit the door. That's the only way you can exit the stage, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel amazing to pull off. Everything in these last 2 stages feels like a perfect culmination of the game's, at times sporadic difficulty curve, ending out in something that would have been impossible at the beginning, but now comes naturally. All of that leads up to the final showdown with the sorcerer Haruko. Oh no, no ambiguity. This was the worst. Worst part of the game. Worst part of owning a PS2. This is not a surprise. The first 3 things you learn about this game is that the scarf looks really cool, it's really hard, and the final boss sucks. Okay, so when the fight starts, no it doesn't. The first 8 or 9 hits you land on Haruko don't damage him. He just teleports away and casts a new spell. It's weird, like, there isn't a point to this, it's just to get you familiar with the idea of a boss battle. Weirdest part is that this section just doesn't have any music. I haven't really commented on it yet because I haven't felt the need to, but the game's OST is pretty solid. So why none here? It's a bizarre start to the fight to have to pointlessly whack the boss around to no effect with no music. And it always starts this way. Your dozen or so attempts at the boss always start with a segment that just won't stop. It feels like a glitch, but no, the fight always starts this way with a random dud. But I'd rather spin my wheels than get run over by the fight that follows. Alright, so Haruko's moveset is not hard to understand. He's got a fire, lightning, ice, and a light spell that take the form of huge fireballs, pillars of lightning, rapid-fire icicles, and a spread shot. These attacks are not hard to avoid. In fact, you can avoid almost all of them by simply turning around and walking away. When trying to hit the boss, though, that's when the problems start. So Haruko is invincible, except when he's not. You'll know when he stopped being invincible when the attack that you tried to hit him with ends up killing you instead. It's a very subtle tell. If you try and hit him, he has a great chance to simply counterattack and deal more damage than you can. He also has a hidden move where if you're too far away, he'll teleport behind you 5 times, hit you for nearly unavoidable damage, and then end it off with an explosion. There is no range he can't instantly kill you at, and the only time you can be totally certain it's safe to hit him is when he's in the air, since he can't block. The only way to deal any damage to him whatsoever is with a charged attack. You get them from these talismans, and oh ho ho, does the apple not fall far from the tree! These little guys take anywhere from 1 to 3 hits to kill. And not only do they get a fireball, but if you get too close to them without attacking, they can self-destruct. That means your charged blade gets a little weaker, and you get less yin energy. Oh yeah, that's still a problem. You have to do all this while juggling your yin energy. This fight is awful, just an unfun slog that doesn't even deserve to be called a sunshine moment. That game had Yoshi in it. Yoshi would never do this to me. In a game all about fighting fast and feeling unstoppable, a brick wall wouldn't have been my first choice for a final boss. And there really isn't a way to exploit or beat the boss quicker. What you see is what you get. I wouldn't blame someone for giving up here, just dropping the game cold turkey. I loved almost every second of this game, and even then, this is so unfun, I was completely prepared to die trying. That was supposed to be the message I wanted to take away from this, that sometimes you need to realize when a game stops playing fair and takes you for granted. It's the final boss. You're not missing any more content if you call it quits now. All you really lose is bragging rights, and anybody who you're bragging about Shinobi on PS2 to would probably understand. I was in a really good rhythm of killing enemies, dodging attacks, dying, regret, and it came down to the ultimate choice. I could either take the boss out, or risk going for the cinematic by killing the last enemy. And in a flash of pure cowardice, I took the easy way out and killed the boss. Wow, Jack, did it feel good to beat the boss? Whoa, making a lot of assumptions there, like that I can feel anything anymore. The game ends with the castle crumbling around us as Hotsuma resigns himself to die so that Akujiki is sealed forever. And with that, Shinobi comes to a close. Mario, what the hell? Where were you when I needed you? So, I know the game didn't stick the landing. Like, really badly. Landed in another competition bad. But divorce how terrible that was from the equation, and you have one of the best action games on the PlayStation 2. Maybe one of my favorites overall now. Don't get me wrong, it's not for everyone. It's hard. Really hard. Probably the hardest game I've ever beaten. But at the same time, I beat it. It does an incredible job teaching you how to get better. Save for 6A and the final boss, failure never comes out of nowhere or feels cheap. When you fail, the game makes sure you understand what went wrong. It lets you adapt, it lets you learn, and it lets you get better. Seriously though, if you want to throw in the towel at the final boss, just use my footage and say it was you.